Well, hello everybody. This is Mr.Sanemon. I'm gonna be doing this video today. I've been wanting to do it for a while, and Fraps really hates that dynamic lighting, doesn't it? Getting just over 100 frames per second on these settings without Fraps, and then turn on Fraps and it's bouncing all over the place. So I'll try to keep it brief. And anybody who follows my videos, I am working on my next cartoon review. It's Samurai Jack, so that's no secret or anything. It was a via request, and hoping to do a bit of a better video for that one. So I'm working on the script and all that sort of stuff right now. I want it to be nice. So I sort of figured I'd do this video to mention that and to talk about a couple of things that I don't really need excellent video performance. By the way, I'm normally running WoW on Ultra, but I can only run it on Fair with Fraps. So if anybody knows why Fraps causes this much lag in this particular game, then let me know, because I've done plenty of other stuff with Fraps before and it's never caused this big of a frame rate dip. But anyway, let's get into it. So the topic of this video, and the title more than likely, is how to run a successful guild and how to run a successful raid team. I just got back into WoW, so I just started up my guild, and I thought, hey, I see a lot of guilds failing within the first, couple of months, first couple of weeks even. And the thing is, if you only last a couple of weeks, you didn't try hard enough. I'm going to say that right now. That's my opinion on it. If you can't put the effort in, don't expect your guild to be successful. I know it's just a video game, but if that's the way you view it, then join someone else's guild. The reason that I have my guild on this server is simply due to the fact that this server is incredibly cliquish and it's so hard to get in with the right crowd, that I have to have my own guild in order to operate. Long story short, and I guess the way you're probably going to hear it no matter how I say it, is there are a lot of assholes on this server, and I prefer to not deal with the assholery. So, first things first, you're a guild leader. Let's not even talk about raiding yet. That's a whole second topic right there. You're a guild leader. And by the way, new interface. I love it. Love Pitbull and stuff. But anyway, you're a guild leader. First thing you need is a name and a few people to found your guild, and then you're gonna have to level it and grind rep and all that other stuff. This is Mr. Pandaria related, so no, not gonna worry too much about leveling your guild or whatever. You're going to have to set up your ranks, and you're going to have to start recruiting, and there is no such thing as passive recruiting. You're not going to have people asking to join your guild at first. Passive recruiting comes later, way later. Everything is going to be active. You're going to have to send out invites, make posts on the forums, make a website, and websites are cheap or free. If you want to get a free one, there's Guild Launch Engine, ENJIN, and Guild Portal, I think. And there are several of them. And most of them pack in Mumble or Ventrilo support, so there's that too, so that's a really good deal. The other thing is, you're going to want to be friendly. You're going to want to make connections. If you know other people on the server, you want to talk to them. If in terms of recruiting, if you have someone, and by the way, I recommend that you don't try to start a guild by yourself. Get connections. Do not hit 90, do not hit 85, do not hit 80, whatever, whatever expansion you have. By the way, recommend being level cap. Don't try starting. You're not going to have any luck starting a guild if you're new to the game. So first of all, get level capped, get acquainted with the game, get to the point where you feel comfortable helping other people, because that's a lot of what you're going to be doing. Don't be picky with people who join your guild. Don't expect them to have high item levels. Don't expect this, don't expect that. That's if you want to make a raid team. But just to get a community set up, just to get people posting in guild, just to get people talking to people recruiting. Just don't be picky. Just take people. If they don't like it, they'll leave. If you don't like them, you can boot them. If you don't like them, you can talk to them. I think I highly recommend having Ventrilo or Mumble. That is a huge bonus to anybody joining your guild. It also shows that you're committed. Having a website and having Mumble show that you are a committed guild leader. It shows that you are willing to put in some money and some time. Mumble, my current Mumble server is a 25-slot Mumble server, and it runs $4.50 a month. I just got it the other day because I just came back to WoW and I just started trying to fire up my guild again, and but I know how to run a guild. I've done it before in the past. Right now I'm a little pitiful. I only have 31 people on the roster, but there are 31 toons on the roster, and a good portion of them are my alts. But the most important thing to remember is that there are other guilds on the server. You don't get first picks until you're level 25. People are going to be skeptical about joining. You have to make sure that they take you seriously. So the primary thing that you do to do that is you take a good name. Make sure there's a story behind your name. People will ask about it, and you want to be able to tell them, well, this is why I have X name. This is the story behind the name. And you want to make sure that you know the current content, know the dungeons, know the raids, know the scenarios, know the achievements, know the challenges. Know it. Know your stuff. Know your class. And better yet, know other classes. That knowing the game is going to help you tremendously, because if you can't help people, if someone asks you a question, an easy question especially, and you simply do not know the answer, they're not going to be able to take you seriously. This is not like running a business. You're not their boss. You don't automatically get their respect. You have to earn the respect of people on the server. So, long story short, you are a nobody when you start out. Make a name for yourself, especially, but don't make a bad name for yourself, and especially don't get a bad reputation. People will remember you. You may not think they will. You may think they won't. This guy won't recognize me. But if you remember them, it's a good idea. It's a good bet. It's a safe bet that they remember you. Try to find which other guilds will help you. If you've been in other guilds, then figure out which people there were outcasts and try to bring them into your guild. Absorbing people or snatching people up from other guilds is not necessarily a nice thing to do, but if you were already a friend with the person, then it helps. And I'm sorry the frame rate keeps dipping. I'm sort of trying to run around Orgrimmar to keep it a bit more entertaining, a bit more pleasing to the eye, but it's really just sort of lagging. Another thing to remember is people aren't going to automatically want to talk to you. You have to initiate conversation, and you have to be persistent. People aren't going to... You have to get them interested. They're not by default going to be interested in your guild. What makes your guild different? You have to tell them. Don't expect them to ask. It's all completely active. You know, right now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my macro. Ironclad Legion 12 is currently recruiting players of all variety. We are looking to fill our core raid team. If you're interested in a fun, respectful, and friendly environment, then send me a whisper or go to ironcladlegion.engine.com. We have Mumble. Mention the things that you have that other guilds may not. Mention the things that you have that set you apart. You have to try to be persistent, and it's not going to work very early on. Until you get a good number of people in your raid team, then people aren't going to want to join because you're new and you're unstable. They want a stable, established environment, and they're not going to want it if you have a shitty roster, a bad reputation, or few players. And then also if you're not level 25. Also, some servers are really hard to recruit on. This server is a small server with relatively... It's Uldaman of the US, by the way. A relatively few horde players that aren't in a guild. Taking people on and helping them level is fine. Leveling alts is fine. That's all good and dandy. So, to recap, Be persistent. Don't give up. Make sure that you are actively recruiting, selling your guild, putting effort into it, and being kind but also firm. Do not give a lot away on their on specific issues. If there's something that, remember that while they are a part of the guild, you are still the leader of the guild, and you have to act the part. One final note, that's sub-note of that, but it's also going to bleed over into the rating aspect of this video. I don't do PvP too much, so I'm not going to talk about running a PvP group in RBGs, but I'm assuming it's probably got to have a little bit of the same organization and some of the same tactics. Don't be too nepotistic. If you have friends and family, that's good, they're in your guild, but don't make it too obvious that you're favoring them. Preferably don't favor them at all. Don't automatically promote them to officer if they're new to the game or if they're unexperienced. And finally, don't favor them on loot. Do not favor them on loot. The loot needs to be fair. That is the only way you're going to get anywhere. In terms of officers, you need a good group of officers, but you don't need too many officers. You don't need too few officers. I would say in a guild, let's just say a guild of 100 individual players. That's a pretty big guild, but it's not uber big. No more than 11 officers, no fewer than 3. No more than 11, no fewer than 3. If you have tiers of officers like I do in this guild, then you want 2 people that are sort of your right and left hand, and then you want to layer it down. So you sort of have sub-officers that are sort of showing that they've earned the respect, but don't worry too much about hierarchy. It's not a major issue. But if you're going to just have a regular officer set up with just officers, you know, try to keep 3 people, because that is sort of an 8-hour shift sort of thing. Plus you, that narrows it down. Divide the day, you have, 6 hours apiece, which I see a lot of people on 6 hours. Which means you pretty much cover the whole day, meaning you always have an officer on. It's important that you always have officers on. Officers that you can trust. I've liked people before, but they were not officers because I did not trust them to do a good job. Not that I thought they would steal from the guild or ninja things, because I don't like people who do those sorts of things, but I did not trust them to be good leaders or good recruiters. Make sure that everybody has their job. If they're new in the guild and they're just there to fill space, then don't worry about assigning them to do anything. But if they're officers, make sure that they know, hey, you're the recruiting officer. Hey, you handle this. Hey, you handle that. And now with that, we'll go into rating. First things first on rating. Before you even worry about loot, you have to worry about progression. Meaning you should probably start with 10s. And here's why. You don't need more than 2 5-man groups of people. You need 3 healers, maybe even 2 if you're really good. Though progression, you're probably going to want 3 healers, 2 tanks, and some DPS. And you're going to want, usually I try to run 2 tanks, 3 healers, 2 melee DPS, 3 casters. And in a 10-man group, you have the benefit of being able to have everyone in their own armor type. So you have, like, you could have a DK and a, say, a warrior tank and a monk tank, with your healers being a priest, a pally, and a druid, a elemental shaman, a hunter, and a mage, and a death knight, and crap, what did I miss? A death knight and whatever for your DPS, so you could run that sort of setup. I've seen it done, but don't worry too much about making sure that all item slots are covered, all specific item types are covered. Just try to find a good balance. I usually run something like either a bear or a warrior, and then a DK or a pally. But they've added monks in, so they sort of fit in there too. But ultimately, I don't think it really matters which 2 tanks you run. And then make sure you get a good group set up. Make sure that you have raid times that work for you primarily, and then anyone else that agrees upon it. Okay, raid times, if you're progression, 2 or 3 raid days a week. If you're casual, 1 or 2 days a week. If you're, hardcore progression, then you're going to want to raid 3 or 4 hours. Casual or just regular progression, 2 or 3 hours. But don't be hard on it. My raids schedule it starts here and ends X. I don't give a shit when it ends. I will stay all night if I have to. It just, whenever the first person drops out, that's when we call it. And, that person doesn't get stigmatized or anything like that, because everyone wanted to quit, just no one was doing it because we were just in the zone. So that's sort of how we run the raids. Okay, you want to have your raid officers in there to help with coordination. You're not going to be the only, as a raid leader, you want to do call outs and such, but you don't want to be, the only person doing it. As a raid leader, you want to make sure that people are all on the same page. If you have a requirement, say mumble, then you have them. Everyone has to have mumble, otherwise they're not doing it. You don't want to be too authoritative about it, but you don't want to let people slide, and then it messes up the whole raid group. You don't want to let. You're only as strong as your weakest member. So, and having standbys, that's all good and dandy, but just getting it started, you'll figure it out once you got it started. So I'm just going to go over that sort of stuff. You need, usually, and most successful raiding guilds, the raid leader is either a tank or a healer. But I've seen DPS do it, but that's really rare. So, and the reason is, DPS are seen as the guys who play and have the most fun, and they just, they're all there to just pile on and kill the boss and loot things. And the healer's there to support, and the tank's there to support. And if you feel like the tanks and the healers if you consider the tanks and the healers as holding people up, and that's also the responsibility of the raid leader, it just sort of meshes well. Healers and tanks tend to have the personality types, the maturity to deal with raid leading. Now, I've seen people who really like DPS who are fantastic raid leaders, but, I've seen a lot more tanks and healers, and it may not, and I'm not saying a DPS can't be a successful raid leader. I have seen it done before, just saying that majority of the time, and I feel like being a tank or a healer, especially if you're particularly good at it, it commands a bit more respect. And that leads me to the next thing. If you're the raid leader, you better be damn good at whatever it is that you're doing, and in fact, I don't want to be too elitist sounding in this, but you should probably be the best in the guild. You need to have it down to a science. Not only do you need to have your role down to a science, you need to have other people's roles down to a science. Different people like different roles, so usually, and a lot of times, people have different officers who can coordinate different things, like a tank officer who sort of, helps all the would-be tanks get into their shit and be ready for their particular raid group. A lot of guilds have more than one raid team. And then there are, DP casters that deal with that, healers, and that sort of stuff that'll help people get geared and figure things out and learn their roles and learn their class and get good. And that is the basically be good at your role. You're not going to be able to make all the call-outs, so you want to have good raid officers who can watch out for things and help out in terms of coordination. But you also want to help. You also want to be at the helm of keep developing strategies, especially if your progression. Make sure that whatever strategy it is works for you. If you're doing server side progression, then obviously you're going to have guides and stuff. But especially if you don't do the LFR or PTR. But if you're higher in progression, which I've never run, unfortunately, you're going to probably have to develop your own strategies. I've developed my own strategies before because a lot of times it's situational. Sometimes the tank spot or the learn to raid or whatever, their guides will be very, very good for one type of group with one group comp. But you'll come up with a strategy that works better than theirs or better for you than theirs. And that's what progression is. It's developing a good strategy. I've never seen another raid group that used a Fury Warrior to tank Nefarian's Trash on 10-man mode on Phase 1. The raid guild that I ran in Kata, the raid guild that I ran with in Kata was the only guild that we done that on. That sort of stuff. And it worked. You know, that was the time that we downed them when we decided, hey, let's be a little bit creative with the ads in Phase 1 so we can better manage the crackles. And it's like, hey, we'll stick the Fury Warrior, you know, on the trash, which worked. So develop your own strategies. Finally, let's get to loot. If you're pugging people in, Need Before Greed works, especially if you're pugging people in. DKP is fine. I personally use EPGP, and I'll go into why I think it's the best. It is a quotient. It does not build. It does not have any... If you use default plain Jane vanilla EPGP, it does not have any guild leader input. There is a system that is managed, and it automatically divvies things up, and you don't have to do anything, and all you do is figure out, hey, does this person have more points than this person? Okay, they get the piece that they wanted. Now, I do a system where it is, if you need it, if it is an upgrade. Side grades are second. They count as the greed portion, or the aspect portion, or however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, of the EPGP. It's usually half the points is what we do. So if Tank A wants best in slot shoulders and Tank B wants best in slot shoulders, but Tank A shoulders are, you know, of the same item level, but Tank B shoulders are of a lower tier, then Tank B is going to get them, even if Tank B had fewer points. But you know, when it's flat out progression, everyone's gearing up. You know, obviously. And in 10 mans, you don't have to deal with it as much. But EPGP works as sort of a tiebreaker, as sort of a way to keep track. I reset EPGP every 2 to 3 months, depending on the situation. Reset it at the beginning of every patch, and that's sort of how I do that. Okay. And as you know, notice my gear's not too shiny, but you know, I just came back and I figured I'd help figure things out. This is all of a week of gear. Now, running a raid, you have to figure out what your raid members respond to, what their buttons are. Different raid members are going to have different things that they respond to. I prefer to avoid yelling. Yelling makes chaos, yelling makes people frustrated, yelling makes people not want to do the damn thing anymore. However, strong, stern voice is not yelling. Being very precise and firm in your wording. And I half want to compare it to babysitting, because you wouldn't yell at someone else's kids, but you're also not going to let them get away with whatever they want. You want to be able to have done a good job. So that's what it is. It's basically babysitting, you know, 7 or 8 other people. I'm assuming your officers don't need babysitting. If they do, you made a bad decision when it comes to officers. Screwing around, that's fine in breaks, but in the middle of a fight, you don't want to screw around too much. So, you know, poking fun at each other, that's all fine. Just find your limit and don't go past it. Set a limit, be stern, do not waver, do not shake on your ground. And you will have the respect of your raid members, and you will have a successful raid guild. Strategies and being good at your class, all that, if you can sort of figure it out and you can align it in a way that works for you, then you're going to have a good raid guild. You're going to have a good raid experience. It's going to be fine. You're going to enjoy the whole aspect of it. And that's really it. Just manage your stuff. Be on. Be proactive. And, you know, have a good time. It's a freaking video game. If you're not having fun, then nobody else is going to be having fun. And if it's just and if you have the time to be a guild leader, props to you. If you have the time to be a raid leader, props to you. And hopefully this will help some people who are having trouble getting their guilds started up. be grammatically correct, I guess would be one of my last tips. Show that you're a smart, functional human being. Don't show that you know the content, that you know the game, and try to do it in a concise manner. And don't and if you are the person who likes to troll people, do this, do that, then tone it down when you start making your guild. You don't want that to be the name you make for yourself. Smaller servers are really tight-knit communities. That's the final word on it. Smaller servers are going to be a pain in the ass if you made a bad name for yourself. People will remember you. And big servers tend to have larger name guilds, and it's even harder to make a name for. Smaller servers, it's easier to make a name for yourself, but it's also easier to make a name for yourself. And larger servers, it's hard to make a name for yourself, but the plus side is people will forget you. That's also the downside. It's checks and it's all balanced out that way, and just natural order of things. So I hope you enjoyed the video. My Samurai Jack review should be up next week. I hope should be up sometime next week, and hopefully I can get a couple of people to do the review with me. That'll be fun. Working on the script right now, so that'll be good. This is Mr.Sanemon, and the annotations somewhere on the screen next to my big orc head, I will have some like and subscribe buttons. I didn't put a title card or any ending cards in this because this was really impromptu, sort of like I just decided, hey, I want to do this, and that's what I done. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.